single biggest economic event of the nation. This year, it is a budget with a difference. The Prime Minister will be presenting the budget for the third time in history. Nehru presented the budget in 1958, Mrs. Gandhi presented it in 1970, and Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi will be presenting it only a few minutes from now. Nehru, by the way, started by saying in his modest way that he is going to present a pedestrian budget. Mrs. Gandhi, on the other hand, was seen by the papers the following day as being populist because she hit the taxpayers hard, particularly the rich, by raising taxes. Times certainly have changed. What will Rajiv Gandhi do? We will have to wait and see. Well, in this program, what we plan to do is provide you with on-the-spot news and analysis as the budget proposals are announced. We have a panel of experts with us, and then we'll be visiting the stock exchange in Calcutta for live reactions to the budget. We'll be talking to the man in the street for his reaction and the impact on him. We'll be meeting with shoppers, brave or clever, not sure which, who will be actually shopping while the budget is going on. And finally, we will go to the Lok Sabha and question the Prime Minister immediately after the budget when he comes in. Let's hope we can get him in time. To get the budget to you live has taken Doordarshan and hundreds of people and a huge effort and elaborate arrangements all over the country to get this to you live. So bear with us if things go a little wrong occasionally. There's one new feature which we've introduced this time, and that is that we are going to ask viewers to phone in. So if you are keen on asking the panel or asking any questions or expressing your views on the budget, in short, please be ready. We'll be announcing the phone numbers shortly. But first, what kind of a day has it been for the Prime Minister? We'll be going across to see what he did during the day in the morning. Was it an unusual day because it's his first budget? Well, the first thing he does, of course, is go across to see the President. Now, all Prime Ministers and Finance Ministers have to get the budget signed by the President because it is a financial document. This happened round about between 10 and 10:30 this morning.
The Prime Minister has just returned from the President after having presented the budget to him, and just like any other day, we are waiting on his lawns to see him come out for his morning darshan. We speak to him today on the morning of the budget.
You're spending every day till 3 o'clock in the morning preparing the budget.
Oh, no, not every day. One day till 3.
So was it enjoyable or was it exhausting?
Not exhausting, not more than the normal work. It was difficult to get a budget which we think will be, well, really targeted at the poor sections of society to help alleviate poverty and at the same time at growth.
Well, I'll not ask you anything about the budget, but I'll ask you one question more. That is, you see, the thing is, you're very well known for your short speeches. Would this be your longest speech ever?
Perhaps, yes. I didn't think of it that way, but perhaps.
And this is also your first budget. Was it any different from a family budget, or is it the same?
Oh, my wife does the family budget.
So this is your first.
Well, this might be the Prime Minister's first budget. And he said it's going to be his longest speech. Let's hope it's not as long as last year's speech. If viewers remember, that went on for 2.5 hours. The normal length of a budget speech is about 1 hour. And we hope to be through in about 1 hour and 15 minutes, all things being equal. But before we go on any further, please let me introduce you to our panelists. On my right is Ninan. He's the editor of India Today, the executive editor. And next to him is Lakshmi Jain, who is the managing director of IDS, Industrial Development Services. Now, I'll be asking them questions, and Ninan, if I can just start with you, because the news hasn't quite come in. If the Prime Minister is in fact punctual, at the moment he'll be closeted in room number 10 of the Lok Sabha with his cabinet colleagues, giving a last formal look at the budget, and he'll be coming out any minute. But while we're waiting for the first bit of news, can I ask you, what is the main thing that you are looking for in this budget?
For me, lower taxes.
As simple as that.
No, actually, I think what one should look for is to see how the Prime Minister hopes to control government expenditure. Because you've been through a period of 2 years when there have been reforms on the revenue side, and these have delivered good results. So tax revenues have gone up quite substantially, but the expenditure has gone up even faster.
Yes.
So what you really see happening is the deficit's climbing despite tax revenues climbing very fast.
Yes.
And this can't go on indefinitely. You've got to do something pretty quickly before things get out of control.
So basically what you're saying is that we are running fast on the revenue side, but we are standing in the same place because expenditure is accelerating at the same speed.
And if he doesn't do something about it in this budget, you could have trouble.
I mean, you think in that sense we are coming to a crunch kind of situation? Is it?
I think so, because the deficit I expect this time to be quite large. 1. 2, prices have risen 10% already, or 9 point something. So you don't have too much leeway. And 3, you do have so much flab that you can cut off quite easily.
Yes. Now, Lakshmi, what's your number one priority?
Well, I think the character and the context of the budget has changed. According to the economic survey, the finance minister is being rated by taxpayers with cash, accounted or unaccounted. So it is going to be festival time. It's not time for taking but for giving. The question is, who will get the gift from the Prime Minister? Just now he said that poor are also on his mind.
Yes.
And he also made a statement only a few days ago that he wants to eradicate scavenging, the scattering of night soil, which means he is going to touch untouchability, which has worsened because of neglect.
Yes.
And
is that something you're kind of, I mean, you think they have the money to do that? I mean, Ninan was just saying it's a crunch situation on the expenditure side. Do they now have enough resources to, last year, as you will remember, you were right here, expenditure on poverty went up 60%, 70%, those kind of enormous figures. Can he repeat that kind of performance? Does he have the money in his pocket to do that?
Well, the money is there. It's a question of priority. In the revised budget, they have asked for 81 crores to be given to DDA for a transfer of a Asiad stadium.
Yes.
I think in 81 crores, you can take the night soil off the head of many people.
That's right, yes.
And it's a more than an emotional issue.
Yes.
Because one of the prominent Harijan workers, his father and grandfather were sweepers in a school. When he went to the school, the students wouldn't have him because they said, you are a sweeper's son. So what is the use of a new education policy, which does not have a new education practice to make room for these people?
Can I just ask you then, Ninan, you said that you like lower taxes. Do you expect lower taxes? Do you think you'll take that route? I mean, you like it,
the Prime Minister has said often enough that he believes in simpler taxes and lower taxes that are effective, instead of having high tax rates that are not effective. So if he stands true to his belief, I would expect that he's not going to come with a very heavy dose of taxation.
Right.
That's 1. 2, I think this government's major tax reforms have already been put into place.
In the long-term fiscal policy.
In the long-term fiscal policy, in mod VAT last year, in the lower taxes on incomes and so on. And I would think that the Prime Minister will say, I may be wrong, but that you expect more revenue now through growth.
Through growth, yes. I think he did mention that in his interview this morning, that he was looking for growth and something for the poor. We've just heard actually that the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi has entered the Lok Sabha to present his budget for 87-88 at 5:01. That's about 3 minutes ago. So he is pretty prompt, and he's probably just got up. He's been called by the Speaker to start his speech. You've heard the view of 2 experts, one hoping for more for the poor, the other talking about a resource crunch. We did an opinion poll conducted by MARG, an agency, who on what the average man across the country would like to see in this budget, and came out or what they expected to see, not like to, what they expected to. And it came with fairly clear-cut division. 3 particular commodities, cigarettes, petrol and cars, about 70% of people expected taxes to go up. But on kerosene, two-wheelers, computers and TV, half that amount, only 35% expected any price rise through excise duties. So people make a clear distinction between what they consider are luxury commodities and what they consider are commodities on which they'd like to see no taxes. Lakshmi, now on your side, do you think there's going to be a lot more on poverty this time, or is it just a hope? I mean, you'd like that, but you expect it?
I had made the point even earlier that putting in more resources for anti-poverty programs is only one aspect of the problem, but the method of their utilization today is far more important. And I think, I expect that the statement the Prime Minister made only a few days ago, that following the example of Gujarat and Karnataka, he feels that all the states must quickly go in for decentralization and trust the programs to the village panchayats. So I expect that in the present budget, he will see that many of the so-called centrally sponsored schemes of poverty alleviation are actually transferred wholesale to the village panchayats, if you want efficiency.
Yes.
And if he is in a position to spare some more money for those, that would be highly welcome.
I see. Can I just take this opportunity to introduce two more experts we have on our panel. One, of course, is very familiar to all the viewers. That's Nalini Singh, columnist and regular consumer defendant, I'd say. And of course, another is the well-known in Bombay, an eminent lawyer, Dinesh Vyas. It's welcome, very good to have you. Nalini, can I just start with you and ask you about non-plan expenditure? Are we getting our money's worth in that area? The government is, as Ninan said, is going up every year. Is it value for money for the consumer?
Yeah. Prannoy, I'm very glad you asked me that, because I would like to see, but I'm realistic enough to realize that what I'd like to see is not what I'd expect to see. I would like to see in this budget a tremendous stress on maintenance of infrastructure already created. Yes. And that is part of non-plan expenditure. That's right. But I fear that that's really going to be slightly optimistic, because already we've had a 5% cutback on non-plan expenditure. And yet, if you step out of the cities, even 1 hour by a limousine, even, or maybe 2 hours on a bus, you come across roads with potholes, schools where there are no children, maybe buffaloes inside and children in the streets, canals and nalas which have silted up, and all kinds of things which make you wonder what is happening.
Yes, I think I've seen them on some of your programs, actually.
Yes, indeed, and I hope that you'll see more of those on our programs. But on the other hand, this is the reality, and therefore I'm afraid I just cannot associate myself with a budget that's going in for new expenditure and is going to neglect maintenance of assets. In fact, as far as I recall, the 7th 5-year plan laid a lot of stress on using existing capacity.
Yes, can I just ask you, is it just a category problem, a definition problem, that maintenance is put in non-plan, and therefore whenever we design a plan we just forget about it, and everybody talks about cutting down non-plan, and therefore and there are other aspects like interest and salaries which are much tougher to cut, so they just cut maintenance. Would you just like to see that whole category shifted to plan?
Well, that could be possibly an operational strategy, but I think it's a matter of attitude. I just do not think that we as a people, and then we as the people who have a government which does certain enlightened things too, I don't think this government is particularly concerned at this point in time about maintenance. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that this budget will prove me wrong.
Now, Dinesh, do you think the government's enlightened, and does it do enlightened things some of the time? And if it did an enlightened thing on the tax front this time, what would you like to see? Well, and what do you expect to see as well?
Yeah, the expectations are centralizing on two main points. This is, these are the two things people are looking forward to.
Yes.
One is the exemption limit raised from 18,000 to 25,000.
I see. Is that expectations or hopes?
Well, both.
Both, yes.
And justifiable hopes, I would say.
Yes.
And the second is the reduction of the rate as well, and more, Prannoy, because of the success which we have seen. Because of the reduced rates, there has been better voluntary compliance with the tax laws, and what therefore people look forward to is the rate being reduced from 50% to 45%, or if the Prime Minister takes the very bold step, even 40%, and look forward then to a day where the black money completely disappears.
Yes. Now that's interesting, because I quite agree with you. That is the focus of attention. I mean, income tax and personal income tax in particular grabs the headlines every time. But of course, it's only, what, 10% of the total tax revenue, in fact less.
Yes.
80% is excise tax. And unfortunately, that is perhaps more insidious in the economy and its negative impact. But Ninan, what do you think in terms of, do you think he's going to change the income tax rates this time?
I don't know what he will do, but what Dinesh says is, I think, very much a Bombay view of what the budget should be. Because you must recognize the fact that one, tax rates on incomes have dropped quite substantially already. Two, black money creation is not entirely dependent on just personal income tax. It depends on so many other things. It depends on controls and whether you evade something and
Yes.
you evade excise duty, and that's black money.
Yes.
So I don't think it automatically means that.
Yeah.
And I think there are far more important tasks that he's got to perform, because how much more can you cut the income tax rate and still get higher revenue? And you can take it up to a point.
I think what Dinesh was actually pointing to was the fact that in the last 2 years you've had such a fantastic growth in revenues despite cutting tax rates, and you should learn a lesson from that and cut it again.
That's right. But not completely, to a very reasonable level,
To a reasonable
not beyond that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, as I mentioned earlier to viewers, that we'll be asking for viewers to phone in and ask us questions. I have a phone right here, and you can ask anybody in the panelists. Please keep your questions short. I'll be giving you the phone numbers very shortly, and as soon as if you've got pens and pencils at hand, they're right here in front of you now. If you're around the Madras area, that's the phone number, 565-992. If you're around the Bombay area, 492-962, 492-3350, 492-3254. Calcutta, 465-854, 469-054, 465578. And in New Delhi, you could call 382-680, 382-411, and 382-411. I think that's been repeated twice. We'll check that later. But the point is, you can call any of these. We'll select you. If we select your call, we'll ring you back, so you don't have to pay for long STD charges. So don't worry calling any city. We'll ring you back if you're selected. Well, right now the Prime Minister is actually talking about the economy. Generally gives good news about the economy, obviously. Bad news is left for the panelists to unveil. But Ninan, can I ask you, did the Prime Minister wake up this morning to a healthy economy or an economy in bad shape?
No, I think he's been in a pretty comfortable position on the economy, and therefore he has an easier task than he would otherwise, because you've had good growth rates. You've had a situation where the budget itself has been in a reasonably comfortable position. You've had prices under control to a degree where you haven't had double-digit inflation for many years on end. And you have industry booming. So if a finance minister can't capitalize on this situation, then I mean he can't capitalize on anything.
Yeah. Lakshmi, do you think the economy is in good shape?
Well, it's a question of you look at the economy from which framework. All the numbers which Ninan has mentioned, they are right, and the picture is good looking, as the cover of the economic survey itself shows.
I see.
But if you look at it from the point of view of the unemployed and the destitute and the poor, they don't seem to be related to this economy. So I'm sorry to strike this note. I personally feel the Prime Minister is probably having uncomfortable lines.
Well,
taking on the burden of directing the economy, and when he has said he wants to combine the objective of poverty and growth, then surely he will have comfort on one side but quite a lot of discomfort on the other side.
Well, a lot of people would say that the two are not contradictory, of course. Growth would lead to poverty elimination, but you would say that there is a problem there. That is, there is a conflict of interest.
You were mentioning in terms of priority of resources.
Yes.
I'm sorry to tell you that on the scavenging conditions, a report was done by Home Ministry 26 years ago.
I was going to mention that. Scavenging we've been trying to remove for, as far as I remember, actually, as a child.
Govind said that immediately it should be abolished.
That's
we can't
right.
carry night soil on our heads.
Yes.
So surely we have spent not inconsiderable sums on development.
Yes.
But how is it that these people don't get the benefit of
That's right, actually.
So priorities are very important. They may be related, but how?
Well, we've got a budget flash just now, which says that this is music to your ears, Lakshmi. Greater thrust to anti-poverty programs. So let's see what that means, because there was a pretty large thrust last year. I don't know how he can repeat that kind of performance. But we have got a short interview with the president of the Bombay Stock Exchange for another Bombay point of view to find out what he expects from the budget, because the stock exchange certainly reflects a large, they're all waiting with bated breath for this moment.
Market expects that the income tax rate will be reduced by 10%. Prime Minister would like to reduce income tax by 10%, gift tax may be abolished, and further incentives to small investors by either way of dividend ceiling may be high up, so that small investors may be benefited with income tax matter.
Well, Dinesh, obviously you've been talking to him because he said almost the same thing that you did. Obviously that is the Bombay view. People are hoping for a reduction in income tax. But don't you think, as a tax expert, that there is too much focus on income tax? I mean, I think what we should do is really look at the share it has in this overall budget that the government has. It's a very minor proportion. Of course, it grabs the headlines. It is important for a certain section of society, but you know that there are only 40 lakh taxpayers in the whole country, income taxpayers. Why is it that there is such a focus on this? Why can't we move to something else that is a much greater impact on the economy?
I do stray considerable focus on it for this reason, that the income tax and the black money which goes along with it, it always has a direct impact on the national fiber of any country, the values. And the values which are, generated, or the bad values which are generated on account of violation of laws, and mainly it comes to income tax, that is the important point.
Yes.
And it is therefore very necessary for the national development, also for the economic development, for us to ensure that there is a system where the black money does not exist.
Yes.
It has a much larger repercussion than merely the raising of the revenue.
Nalini, are you worried about income tax? I mean, most of your programs, I don't even see income taxpayers. I mean, that's the bulk of the country after all.
Yes. Prannoy, Mr. Vyas spoke about the national fiber, and I was thinking, when he said national fiber, I could see sellotape somehow. And that signified for me, for the moment, unfortunately, national fiber, simply because I think I'll go back, before answering your question, to the fact that we seem to be stuck together, cobbled together as an economy and as a country. We are either cobbled together or we are stuck together with sellotape, simply because we are pouring in our resources into this defective infrastructure.
Yes.
And that's like pouring water into a cracked vessel. And incidentally, that's not my understanding of the trickle-down theory.
Yes, okay.
But on this question of income tax, I think that I'm in total agreement with what you said, and Ninan said that with so few people who pay income tax proportionately, it really is indirect taxes which are of extreme importance. And here one expects wisdom in what you levy, in what you raise in indirect taxes on. Surely
Yes.
revenue has to be raised.
Yes.
But I would go back to Mr. Jain's point about what you're doing to the items which are required by those who are on the brink of survival.
That's right, yeah. Well, I guess I've had actually two more flights. We'll be going to the Calcutta Stock Exchange because there seems to be apparently a lot of hectic trading activity there already. It is very unusual actually that in India we do open the stock exchanges sharp at 5 o'clock when the budget opens. So we'll be going there very shortly. But before that, a quick budget flash. The Prime Minister has announced, as Finance Minister, that priority will be accorded to education, housing, and agro-based industries. So I think in the early part of his speech on the expenditure side, these are the three areas obviously he'll be focusing on. And he has talked again about the accountability of the public sector. He says that they're going to be provided more autonomy, and that he'll be presenting a white paper on autonomy for the public sector and accountability for the public sector shortly. Now, if we can go over to the Calcutta Stock Exchange, we have a camera live there, and see what the situation is down there on the floor. It is, of course, an amazing place. As you can see, they are waiting around with bated breath. They're the one group that is affected by things other than income tax. They are affected by all kinds of moods, expectations, animal spirits, whatever. I hear some of them are in fact have just rushed out to watch the program because that's where they'll get the news the quickest, because we are live while nobody else is live. But anyway, we've got a interviewer there, and let's hear what he has to say.
This is Sanjeev Manchanda reporting to you live from Calcutta. At this moment, I'm standing here on the first floor of the Calcutta Stock Exchange building. The Stock Exchange, as you're very well aware, is supposed to be a barometer of the country's economic activity. At this moment, the Stock Exchange is humming with activity, human activity, part of which is no doubt inspired by the fact that this happens to be the Prime Minister's own budget. The noise level here is tremendous. It is not possible for me to hear myself talk. The camera will now take you over for a view of the public here. You can see the excited, expectant faces here, fueled no doubt by the fact that this happens to be the Prime Minister's own budget. The management has arranged for teleprinters to be fixed at various places at the ground floor so that the messages of the Prime Minister can be received and translated to the people here, coterminous with his speech. The activity has already started. The speculation and trading is very much on, and the heat and the excitement can be felt. Well, viewers, after giving you a feel of the heat and excitement being generated here, I would like to introduce to you prominent members of the Stock Exchange here who are here with us to give us their views. Mr. D.K. Khandelwal, the President, Mr. G.S. Mantri, Director Stock Exchange, and Mr. S.A. Shah, also Director of the Stock Exchange. Well, Mr. Khandelwal, what have been the pre-budget expectations here?
Well, due to our Prime Minister giving the budget for the first time in the Parliament, the expectations are very high. And in spite of this, the Stock Exchange has grown in the capital market such a big way that it has come in the limelight now.
So far, do we have an indication of the impact on the share prices about what has happened so far?
Up till now, concrete proposals has not yet come, so you cannot judge them. But so far, I think market is in good shape.
I think that is quite evident.
Well, we'll have to leave them now. We'll be going back shortly and finding out exactly what happened once it heats up even further. One bit of news which I should tell the Calcutta Stock Exchange and the rest of them, we've got a flash that a board will be formed to regulate stock exchanges. Perhaps some viewers would agree that it's necessary. We have a flash again, a budget latest. We've got some actual hard news figures, and that is on education. The figures on education are they're up. The expenditure on education is up to 800 crores from 350 crores. That is more than doubling the outlay on education. That's an unusual size of increase again, and obviously they focused on education as an important area. We don't know whether it's primary or secondary at the moment. Lakshmi, do you have anything to?
Is this 350 crore the revised estimate or the budget estimate?
I would have said it's probably the revised, but I mean we can check on that.
Because last year's percentages were somewhat.
Yes, but even if it's even if it is the budget estimate, you're comparing budget estimate with budget estimate. So it's anyway of a magnitude of about 100%.
Most welcome.
Most welcome. You think it's necessary? Do you think, Ninan, do you think this is a soft bit of investment? Do you think there are returns to education?
Well, more than that, Prannoy, I think what's probably happening is that Operation Blackboard is really supposed to get underway now.
Yes.
It should have got underway last year, or the year that's just ending, and it didn't happen.
Yes.
And I think they expect to really kick it off in a big way this year.
Yes.
And probably what's happening is that he's providing the money for this to actually happen, so that schools get second rooms and blackboards and all the facilities that they don't really have.
Yes.
So I think that's what this
Nalini,
means.
you were saying actually earlier that you've seen schools without teachers and without blackboards. Do you welcome a doubling of expenditure? I think that's quite more than doubling actually, about 110%.
Yeah, I welcome it. I really do. But I fear that there will be digestion problems. I do not think that it's possible for our infrastructure just now, or for our schools, or for our teachers to absorb such a tremendous growth in investment.
Yes. There is another budget flash actually. We've just heard that this SBI will float a mutual fund for small investors. Now, Dinesh, a mutual fund for small investors, what exactly does that mean for the average viewer? Because there must be a lot of small investors watching a mutual fund for them by SBI.
Well, what it would be is that there will be contribution from, you know, the small investors.
Yes.
And as far as the beneficiary of that fund is concerned,
yes,
that will be decided by the board, by the governing body.
Yes.
And depending upon the case, the facts of each case, the mutual fund will make available to the small entrepreneurs the financial facilities.
I see, I see. So this is basically something when this fund will be invested on the stock exchange.
That's right.
So that's news on the stock exchange. Ninan, you looked very animated when you saw those animated scenes in the stock exchange. Do you think they've got something, a mood of the budget which we haven't, or it's just the Prime Minister?
No, I think the stock exchanges everywhere have been extremely optimistic about this budget that's coming. The stock prices have been going up quite rapidly over the last 1 month. I would think after VP Singh was shifted. And they obviously think that they're going to get a lot of benefits out of this budget. And I mean, certainly a lot of industries that have been facing problems expect some kind of incentives to get back onto higher production curves and so on.
Okay, we do have something on income tax. This is unusual because it comes in the first part. Normally in the second part of there's Part A and Part B. Part A is what the poor are interested, Part B is what the rich are interested, very simply. But this normally comes in Part B. We have actually also our fourth panelist, the Chief Economic Advisor, who had to be in Parliament for the first half, and he's just arrived in the studio.
Bimal.
Hello. Welcome, Bimal.
Thank you.
This is Bimal Jalan, Chief Economic Advisor and Secretary Banking, who's just felt Parliament. What's it like there?
Well, very exciting, I must say. It's jam-packed, a lot of people, standing room only, and just very exciting. It was very tough for me to leave, as you can imagine.
I can imagine. You'd prefer to have stayed on, would you?
Yes, certainly.
Well, we certainly need you here.
I'm your missing link, it seems.
That's right. In fact, there's one thing, if I need a bit of clarification. We just heard something on income tax, and that is changes in the Income Tax Act to protect the dues of workers by way of Provident Fund, ESI, and gratuity. Is there any, I mean, can you elaborate a bit on that? This is changes Income Tax Act to protect the dues of workers by way of Provident Fund, ESI, and gratuity. That's a flash, but is that just a general statement?
No. I think there are what he is saying here. I mean, these are the thrust areas that he has chosen.
Yes.
In the current year's budget. And one of the items mentioned was the workers' dues in relation to Provident Fund, gratuity, and the ESI contribution. The problem was that a lot of complaints were coming in that workers give their contribution to the employers, but these are not deposited in the Provident Fund accounts or the ESI accounts, with the result that if something goes wrong with the unit, then the workers lose that Provident Fund. I mean, this is happening all over. Yes. So what the Prime Minister has provided now, or is going to provide something, is in the Income Tax Act to protect it. And that's what he's saying.
I see. Do have another flash actually, which talks about housing again, which I mentioned was earlier on, which was going to be a thrust area. There's going to be incentives for income taxpayers in respect of housing loans taken from specified institutions. Ninan, what do you read from that? We'll get the details later.
I think that's a very welcome thing, because housing has been a really very neglected area in this country, one, and two, it is a very employment-intensive area. And among all the things that this government has done, employment has not been one of the high points of success. And if you can really push housing as a major sector of economic activity, one, it meets a certain basic need, and two, I think it provides a lot of employment.
Yes. Lakshmi, is housing an area which is, you think, I mean, employment generation, and do you think it's a welcome area to spend money on?
Across the economy, it's a good idea.
It's a good idea, but not one of your top priority.
No, I would not minimize this by any means,
yes,
but I would only state the preference that its distribution of housing would be across all income structures.
Well, there's something now which we have some information on defense. The latest figures on defense, what we expect in the coming year, most of our opinion polls have suggested that defense is a popular item with the average person, and it seems a fairly sizable increase in defense expenditure. It's going up from 9,287 crores up to 12,500 crores. And with VP Singh as the defense minister now, he's got a sizable increase. That's about, how much is that? That's about 14 or 15% increase in the expenditure on defense.
No, much more.
No, it's 30.
Much more, 34%.
Was it about 34?
Yeah.
About a 34, yes, it's a 35% increase, sorry, 36% increase in the expenditure on defense. And compared to the inflation rate of about 6%, that means it's a very, very sizable real increase in defense expenditure.
He's making it up to VP Singh.
He's making it. Now, is that, does defense, Bimal, does it have spin-offs on the rest of the economy, or is it a bit of an isolated area? Or do we expect multipliers in terms of incomes for people and better growth through defense? Of course.
We certainly do not spend on it because we expect a spin-off. I mean, that is we spend on it because it is necessary and essential thing to do. I mean, it may have some effects, but I don't think that they are really why you spend on defense. I mean, defense, the situation I think the Prime Minister has explained in his address is that was difficult, is difficult, and that we really cannot take any risk there. And so that is what explains it. And it may have the incidental effects and other things for the economy, but that is not.
That's not the main reason.
I mean, that is not the reason to try to think and increase defense expenditure.
Yeah, but Lakshmi, defense is that you've gone along. You said it's great to spend on education, housing is good. Defense, you think it's
no, the country has to be protected for everything else to function. As Vimal said, this is necessary. But we have to realize that the first independence budget was total of 200 crores, and half of that, about 98 crores, was defense. We are now coping with figures of something like 12,512 crores.
Yes.
And even this 9,000 crores was the revised budget.
Yes.
So in the last 12 months, the increase has been substantial. We only hope that it is effectively used. Its spin-off should be that we are well defended in the first place.
Quite right.
Well, one of the interesting things actually we found from our opinion poll was that the general feeling is that you should spend money on defense, and that is not often, you don't read that much in the newspapers. When you take a large sample, there seems to be a feeling of insecurity and everything. Now, on the other hand, on education, housing, we did ask people which way they would prefer expenditure. And we'll be going shortly to some consumers in Connaught Place area, in a shopping arcade, to find out what they think of the budget so far. There's been a minor interruption at the moment, but we'll go to them shortly. Nalini, what are your views on defense?
I'm so glad you asked me, Prannoy, because I thought you'd have the usual attitude of not asking a woman on defense. Without sounding either unpatriotic, but risking to sound naive, I would like to remind ourselves that we are supposed to be a peace-loving country. And whereas I, like all Indians, endorse the earlier views that we have to be well defended, isn't it time? I mean, isn't it time that somebody should say something about defense expenditure rising at an exponential rate, and other expenditures, especially in other sectors, which are to do with change of neurons, I mean development of the brain, etc., not attracting adequate resources.
Yes, I guess there isn't really very much, it's like a bit of a black box for the average viewer. Bimal, why is defense such a black box for all of us?
No, I think what Nalini has said is correct. I mean, that defense, that if we had a choice, we would rather and should spend on something else. I mean, there is no question about it, that you need to spend a lot more on education, anti-poverty, and development in the schemes. But I don't think that is the issue one is considering. I mean, I think the issue that one is considering is that if you are in a given situation and faced with a certain threat, what do you do? Now, obviously, in any area, there are rules for economy, and defense may be no exception. And I think that that is something which the government has to look at. And it is a burden on our budget, something that we have to do reluctantly. But I don't think that that's an issue that really we can, somehow wish away. If somebody across the board is going to get $4 billion from the United States, for example, I mean, that does pose a certain situation.
That's
I mean,
right.
if you didn't have that sort of a thing, it would be a different situation. I mean, so I think that that is a basic hard reality that you really have to respond to. I mean, it's unfortunate, regrettable, should be avoided.
Yes.
But
there is a certain amount of accountability question. Anyway, we do have the quick update on what has been announced so far on education and on defense. On education, we found, if we can just have the graphic on that, education was up about 110%, I think, with an actual increase of about 448 crores. And on the defense side, the increase is about 3,000 crores. So that's the announcement so far, the hard facts.
No, rural development also.
We haven't got the rural development figures yet. They'll probably come in any minute.
But deficit is there.
We are about to get the announcement on deficit. The budget deficit for 86-87, that is last year, is fairly high, 8,285 crores. Now that's the budget deficit for 86-87. That is fairly large compared to what it was expected to be about 3,700. So that is, I think people have expected this. I think Ninan, you did mention it right at the start that you expected the budget deficit to be very high because the government borrowing from the Reserve Bank was growing very fast. Is that larger than what you expected, or it's about what you expected?
No, this is even larger than what one expected because initially it was 3,700 crores, and then you had supplementary demands.
No, I just wanted to clarify one thing which may not have come in your news flash, which is that this 8,200 of deficit contains or includes about 1,200 crores of loan to the Food Corporation of India. It's a one-time loan to Food Corporation of India for buffer stock purposes, which was earlier being financed, through bank credit. So this was a decision that the government took to reduce.
How much was that?
1,200 crores.
1,200 crores.
So the real deficit is really 7,000 crores in that sense. In terms of the money supply impact, it is 7,000 crores.
Large enough.
Yes, I'm not, in fact.
No, it's good to know the numbers.
No, absolutely. I think that it has been our attempt, and I think the Prime Minister's desire, that we should put everything.
Does this mean you've done less window dressing this time, or is it?
No, there is never any window dressing, as
I
you know.
see, of course.
Not visible.
Even while you were in the government. But one point that I think that when we get some more information, this is that it is high. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think there is any point in pretending that it is not.
Yes.
But I think we have to look into why it is high. And this is defense that we just now talked about a little while ago. You had the pay commission problem, and then you had about 700-800 crores on drought and flood relief. But the economic situation is good on the ground. I think this is what probably when you get some more information, I think the finance minister and the prime minister has also said so. That the deficit is high.
Are you suggesting what the finance minister said 3 years ago, that the deficit is appropriate to our circumstances?
No. If I recall, now that you are there, you would know that the finance minister and the prime minister, he has said that the deficit is high, and I do not like it. But then he has gone on to make
Is he going to do something about it?
Yes, and he has gone on to make a very important commitment, I think, which is that I have decided that the deficit in the budget estimates for 1987-88 shall not be exceeded. That is for next year.
I see. He's made a commitment that the budget estimate and the revised estimate will be identical.
Will be identical. No, not identical.
Well,
but
very close.
That the budget estimate will not be exceeded. Some supplementary demands are unavoidable. I am instructing the ministries and other central government organizations to ensure that additional demands are offset by equivalent savings or through measures to raise more resources. This is a very bold statement.
but there are two questions from this.
Yeah.
One, is he starting from a high level and then saying I'll hold it within that level? And two, don't you think this is failure of fiscal management, that you have a deficit of this size?
No, I think ultimately, you just look at the situation on the ground, in the sense that if the price situation is difficult, you want to reduce deficit, and you must. If the price situation is generally all right, not entirely all right perhaps, but generally all right, then the consequences of taking a very blunt, or making a very blunt attack at deficit has to be faced. And what will you do? You will cut projects, you will cut defense, you will cut drought relief, you cut defense,
No, you mentioned defense. When you have such a large step up in defense expenditure, can't you look at defense to see how much flab there is?
No, of course, but you can't, what I'm saying is that you are faced with a certain situation. Now, all these exercises would need to be carried on. This is anticipatory action. There is nothing which is happening. You would not, that the present price situation, I think, would be consistent with a 4,000 deficit or 8,000 deficit. The rate of
That's interesting, because it is prices after all that is what ultimately interests. But I think it was worth spending a lot of time for the viewer on the deficit, because it is 3.5% of GDP, and it is about the highest for the last 10 years.
But Prannoy, I think this is the essential point, that what the PM is trying to do is to take anticipatory action now. That's why he has made the commitment. There is no reason for him to make this commitment now. But the fact that the deficit is high and he does not like it.
But can I just ask you, this is the deficit of last year?
Last year. That is no said current year. That is the current year which is going to end on March 31st.
Yes.
I know, if I may interrupt.
We have, by the way, sorry Lakshmi, just a second. We have a lot of viewers have been phoning in, and there is a viewer from Bangalore who is apparently on the line. I can try, pick up the phone. I hope he's at the other end. Hello? May I know who's speaking? It's Anita Menon from Bangalore. Just a second, I'll just check whether the viewers can hear you as well. The viewers can hear you. Okay, Anita Menon. Now, could you ask your question short, or if you've got any comment, and I'll convey it to the panelists.
The plan document has also been talking of a non-inflationary fiscal policy. Would you like to comment on what kind of inflation this sort of deficit financing is likely to generate?
Right. I'll just ask, would you like to ask any specific panelists? Right. Ninan, I think I'll choose you for this question. The question that Anjali Menon from Bangalore was asking is, what kind of inflation do you think this deficit is likely to generate? Is that the gist of your question?
Well, this deficit has already taken place because you're at the end of the year. That's one. Two, prices have gone up quite high this year. It's close to 10%. And if you sustain deficits at this level, we don't know what the deficit in the coming year will be, but if it remains high, I do think there'll be a problem on prices.
Okay. Anjali Menon, thank you very much, and we look forward to you calling in us again some other time. Thank you very much indeed for calling in. You were going to say something, Lakshmi, about the size.
No, I was just saying that Bimal was persuasive in what has happened, but the Prime Minister has been in command of the situation. It is not that on the day of the budget, because the indications given last time was that the deficit will be held at 3,500 crores. Now there may have been pressures. Even when the revised budget came, the country was not given an indication that we are going to have a deficit of this order.
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry to quote the scriptures, but according to the Hitopdesh, it says that the cardinal defect in the administration of a state is over expenditure and want of supervision. So what one would like to know is that there is a compulsion of some expenditure, but is all of this expenditure subject to really good supervision?
Actually, there's a very interesting quote, if I remember, from the ex-finance minister VP Singh, who said that a family that does not live beyond its means lacks imagination. But I guess that living beyond your means goes up to a certain point. Beyond that, I don't know, Ninan, in your view, or let me ask Dinesh actually, on the deficit.
Yes.
Do you think this kind of figure, even by Bombay standards, is considered too high?
Well, I would say not very high, keeping in mind the point which very rightly was made by Bimal. The thing to be seen is that this budget has got to be viewed from the situation in which we find ourselves. And the situation is that the budget is presented under the shadow of defense. You will see, as far as the deficit is concerned, it will have a direct impact on account of the increased defense expenditure, which is 3,235 crores, which is the direct increase. And what is to be seen is, again, that this defense expenditure is not only for the security of the country, but we are in a situation where we have to defend our integrity as well.
Okay.
So keeping these two factors together, I think Bimal has made a very valid point.
But basically what you're saying is that it is a special situation because of the border situation or various tensions around the country, and that's why the defense, actually we do have, sorry Bimal, do you want to go?
No, Prannoy, yes. I mean, I just want to make one point very clear to the viewers as well as the panel, that I'm in no way defending the deficit. I'm not saying that it's a good thing to have.
Yes. It is a very high thing.
I think it has been extremely candid of the PM to say that he does not like it. I mean, I think it's for the first time, as far as my memory goes, where the finance minister, while presenting the budget, has chosen to present the true deficit and also said that he does not like it, and then gone on to say, give a commitment, and that is a commitment that only the Prime Minister of the country can give, which is to say that he is going to keep the next year's deficit to the level as given in the budget estimate. Now, what that deficit is, we would know in a few minutes.
We'll know in a few minutes, which you know already. Can't you just give us a hint?
No, but what so that is the important thing, that you are taking anticipatory action, the price situation is reasonable on the ground, and, so.
Now, what I'd like to do, just a second, because there'll be viewers joining us right now, if you can have a quick update on what has happened so far. We'll be looking at, for example, what the government has said on education expenditure. It's been doubled this year, in fact, little more than doubled. The deficit is a whopping 8,285 crores. That is
also more than doubled.
Also about doubled. The defense budget is up by about 3,000 crores. That's up by about 35%, which is obviously partly the first and third are responsible for the second. And we have a new flash that the plan expenditure for this year, which is, I think we just had it shortly there, but I have the figures in front of me. It's for 87-88 is 24,622 crores, and for which compares with last year's figures of 22,300 crores, which is again 10% up. Now, the government has been saying that this again has never been done in any earlier plan. Is that correct, Vimal? Have you maintained your commitment on plan expenditure like never before, or is this a usual phenomenon?
Yes, I think what was said earlier and what is true now, what has been confirmed now, is that 63% of the outlay in the first 3 years of the total 7th plan would have been met with this order of expenditure, which is 24,600. It's larger than what was indicated in December by 600 crores.
I have some question on that.
Yes, Lakshmi, go ahead.
No, my question, maybe Vimal can answer that the plan allocation was assumed on the basis of constant prices.
Yes, I am talking about constant prices.
And what we are now allocating, these allocations are at current prices.
Yes, but when we talk about 63% of the plan having been met, that is at 84, 85 prices.
Is that so?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to hear that.
You should.
I have actually a very interesting quote which the Prime Minister said. The deficit is high and I don't like it. Did you hear him say that while you were there?
Yes, I
you
was
heard him
saying
say
that.
that. Right. That's interesting. Now, I'll just get confirmation on the plan figures because they are a very central part of the budget. The central outlay on the plan is up about 10% this year, up to 24,600 crores from 22,300 crores. Now, after we've digested that, what I think we need to do at this stage, if the panel doesn't mind, I think we'll go and get viewers off the street on Connaught Place shopping. I think it's somewhere near Connaught Place, not actually Connaught Place, but somewhere in Delhi. We'd like to get viewers' reactions to the common man on what actually has happened and what they think, whether they agree with this increase in the defense expenditure, whether they're happy with increases in education, doubling of education, or are they still waiting for harder information. We'll be going there shortly, and we've got 3 empty chairs at the moment, not exactly shoppers, but if we look around, it is a shopping arcade, and we should have a crowd watching this program, and we should ask them shortly exactly what. Right.
थैंक यू प्रणय। देवसरन जी, आपकी खेती है। हाँ जी। आप क्या सोचते हैं इस बजट से आपको क्या फ़ायदा होगा?
हमें इस बजट से मुझे इस चीज़ का फ़ायदा होगा कि खाद है और मतलब सिंचाई है, बिजली का बिल है, और ये सब चीज़ से मुझे बहुत सुविधा होगी। और ये जब खाद वाद बड़ी महंगी 52 रुपये किलो वो बोरी आ रही थी, अब 110 रुपये किलो आ रही है, तो इसका क्या वजह कि इतनी महंगी क्यों की जा रही है, जो कि हमारे ये हिंदुस्तान में बनती है।
आप चाहेंगे कि खाद आपको सस्ता मिले?
हाँ, हमारा यही है कहना कि खाद सस्ती होनी चाहिए। जब सस्ती होगी, जब ये गल्ला सस्ता होगा। जब हम जिस खेत में 2 बोरी डालता हूँ, जिस खेत में 2 बोरी हम डालता हूँ, तो उसमें 200 कुंटल गेहूँ या धान पैदा होता है। अब उतने पैसे तो होता नहीं कि हमने 3 बोरी खाद डालूं, 6-7 कुंटल हमने गेहूं या चावल ये सब पैदा करें।
थैंक यू। अच्छा पवन सरीन जी, आप एक फैक्ट्री ओनर हैं, आप बताएंगे कि आप किस तरह का रिलीफ चाहेंगे?
हम तो चाहेंगे जी कि रॉ मटेरियल जो है वो सस्ता हो, क्योंकि रॉ मटेरियल सस्ता होने से प्रोडक्शन जो है हमारी वो लो बजट में आएगी, और जिस वक्त लो बजट में आएगी तो वो कंज्यूमर प्रोडक्ट जो है वो हमारा सस्ता बनेगा, और सस्ता बनने से पब्लिक को भी सस्ता मिलेगा, जिससे मोटर गाड़ी वगैरह अगर जो चलती हैं तो वो सस्ते में चलेंगी। अगर वो मोटर गाड़ी महंगी चलेंगी तो उसी हिसाब से जो है सारी की सारी चीज़ों के ऊपर फ़र्क पड़ता है। तो इसमें जैसे प्लास्टिक है, लोहा है, पीतल है, तांबा है, ये सभी चीज़ें जो हैं इस्तेमाल में आती हैं, और अगर इन सभी चीज़ों की कीमतों में कुछ कमी मिले तो उससे कीमतें कम होंगी, और उन कीमतों के कम होने से हम सबको बचत दे सकते हैं, उनके लिए अच्छा मतलब बना सकते हैं।
थैंक यू। संजय, आप चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हैं,
आप बताएंगे कि common man, I guess they'll be waiting now for the actual Part B information on taxation, and then we'll get more interesting views. We'll be going back to them shortly. But let's get back to our experts for just a minute before we get, I think we have a budget flash coming up, but before we get to that, Ninan, how do you look, oh, here is the budget flash actually. It says our principal objectives, this is the Prime Minister talking about his budget, our principal objectives are the elimination of poverty and the building of a strong, modern, self-reliant, independent economy. I think that's the key kind of thrust which he wants to give to this budget. Earlier on he had talked about growth and help for the poverty, as you remember. What kind of mood do you feel, Ninan, that this, what kind of context is it generating so far? Because we're still on the expenditure side.
Yeah. I think, Prannoy, what this shows is fairly large increases in expenditure. The key question now is what happens on the revenue side. Because if he's going to sustain this level of spending, is he going to take taxes very high? Or is he going to do something, pull some trick out of his hat that no finance minister has ever done? Which is, have very large increases in expenditure and not increase taxes. And I think this is
so you're basically wondering now where the money is going to come from.
Absolutely, yeah.
Prannoy, can I ask a question
yes,
of Bimal, which I've been wanting to ask? Will inflation hit different prices? Will there be a differential in the impact on prices? We know that there will be 10% inflation perhaps, or whatever.
No, much less. So
much
the
less,
economic
okay.
survey, I'll reply, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So will there be a differential impact on prices? Will some prices increase at a faster rate and others at a slower rate? This person just now we heard was talking about the price of fertilizer, for instance, and there are other people talking about prices of raw materials. Is it? Do you foresee that there will be differential growth rates?
May I answer?
Yes, please go.
Yeah, I think that so far as the price situation is concerned, in the economic survey, the anticipation is that it would be about 6.5% at the end of the year. So as fertilizer prices have not been increased at all, and that is administered price, that's a controlled price. So unless a government takes a specific decision to increase it, fertilizer prices do not increase. We have abundant stocks of fertilizer, as you know, and fertilizer is available very freely. But relative prices do change. But I would stress that as of now, the inflation rates that we are talking about is 6.5 on wholesale and 9% on the consumer price index. But the consumer price index comes down after November. Now the latest data that we have is for December, when the consumer price index, Nalini, did show a fall of 4 points. And I hope that in January, when we get the data, January and February, we should see a further fall. Because edible oil prices, which had shot up to about November, they are now weakening in the month of January and February. So I should imagine that there will be some softening of the overall rate of inflation.
There is a budget flash, Bimal, actually. This is an interesting, Ninan, you'd be interested in this actually. I'd like an explanation on this. There's a 15% tax on all foreign exchange released for foreign travel, excluding travel for educational and medical purposes. In other words,